Want to expand the reach of your content? Start a podcast. Feature industry experts on your show and leverage the influence and reach of your guests to grow your brand. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. Today, I'm going to be sharing the 7 specific steps that we use to reach out to potential guests to book them to be on our podcast here on B2B Growth. Now, if you have a podcast, this episode is likely going to be valuable for you. If you have an interview-based show where you need to find and book guests for your show, it might also be valuable to 2 other types of folks out there maybe listening to this. One, if you are using content-based networking, the 3-part framework that James talks about in his book that we use here at Sweetfish to build relationships with future customers through content collaboration before ever doing any sort of service pitch, then this episode could be for you. Also, several of the touches that I mention here in my outreach to potential podcast guests could translate and apply very well to your cold outreach efforts and your prospecting efforts across email, LinkedIn, and incorporating video. All right, let's get to it. I'm going to share with you the steps that I use to reach out to a new prospective podcast guest. It starts with 2 emails, 3 touches via LinkedIn, a touch with video, and then finally what some people call a breakup email. Now let's talk about the 3 emails, the first 2 that begin the sequence and the one that ends it. I just did a word count on all of mine and noticed they all fell between 30 and 40 words. Now, if you're thinking this seems way too short, how am I going to pitch someone to be a guest on my podcast or contribute to our blog or do some other sort of content collaboration? Then this isn't going to give them enough information. And I can tell you the opposite is true. I receive emails each and every week with 5-paragraph long pitches for guests to be on our podcast, B2B Growth, or one of the other shows that we produce. And it just strikes me as I don't have enough time to read this, even though there might be really good information in there. You want to hook someone early. If you have an established show, then maybe drop a stat about your reach. If you've had some guests on that look like them, or maybe that they admire, then maybe do a name drop there. But avoid the temptation to make it long and lengthy. It should be 3 or 4 sentences, 30 to 40 words max. The other thing you want to do is remove all of your images and links from your email signature and the email itself. Because if you are cold emailing someone brand new that you've never emailed with before, you want to increase your chances of getting past any spam filter and make sure that the email is actually opened and read. You know, on most emails that I send, we have our standard signature here. We use Sigster to have a banner for our podcast, and we have, our social media links. But when I'm doing outreach to new podcast guests, I use the sequencing tool through HubSpot sales tools, and I have a very basic signature on that one that just has my first and last name, co-host of B2B Growth, Sweetfish Media, not sweetfishmedia.com. Again, I want to remove all images and links as I'm cold outreaching to someone, whether that's a sales outreach or a pitch for content collaboration. My next few steps, I break up LinkedIn into 3 specific steps. Now, a lot of people like to identify someone that they want to work with, or someone that they want to have on their podcast, or someone they want to collaborate on content with, and they go straight to that LinkedIn connection request. Now, what I prefer to do is stop and slow down a little bit and put 2 steps before that LinkedIn connection request to maximize the chances of that being accepted. Number one is just to follow them on LinkedIn. If you view some people's profile, you'll notice that that big connect button actually says follow. It depends on the user and how they've set up their profile. If it's not there, click on the three little dots for kind of the extra options and just click follow. That will put you into their notification feed that they have a new follower, unless they've turned that piece off, but most people haven't. And it gives you some visibility without asking for anything so that when further emails, your video step that I'm going to mention here in a second, and your LinkedIn connection request come through, they've seen your name somewhere before. The other step along these lines is when you're on their profile. Now, you could break this up into another step the following day, or for efficiency, while you're there hitting follow, you could scroll down, look at their content, and engage in this next step. I'll leave that up to you. But I have seen it to be very, very effective to look at some of their recent activity. Have they commented on a post? Have they shared something? Have they written a post themselves? And truly take a second to engage with that. Don't just scroll through their feed and hit thumbs up on 5 different posts. That's very obvious that, hey, I'm just trying to get on your radar. Look for something that you can truly engage in. And if you're looking for a way to leave meaningful comments, check out the episode that James and I did on how to leave meaningful comments on LinkedIn that we'll link to in the show notes of this episode here. So we've got our first 2 emails. Again, keep them short, keep the images and links out, hit them with a LinkedIn follow, engage with their LinkedIn content. And then the next step is to send a LinkedIn connection request. What I prefer to do is always personalize this. And the other thing to keep in mind here is to keep it short and even maximize that first line, because most often when you see a LinkedIn connection request, whether it's on your desktop or on your phone, if they've personalized it, you don't see the whole message unless you click see more. Assume that the person seeing it is not going to click see more, because more often than not, that's going to be the case. So what I like to do is if I say, hey, John, comma, or dash, I don't put a line break and start a new paragraph with why I reached out. I put it after a space in that very first line so that I can put something valuable there. Like, you'd be a great guest on our podcast. And notice how I didn't say, we have a leading podcast. We get this many downloads. I started with them. Now, if you're not using this for podcast outreach, it'll be a little bit different, but make sure you maximize everything on that first line to be about them and show that it's personalized. They may not click see more. They may only glance at it for a second. So maximize the space available there. My next step after the first 2 emails and the 3 steps on LinkedIn is to send a personalized video email with BombBomb. Now, there are a number of tools you can use for sending video. I really love BombBomb because I know a lot of great people there. They have a fantastic company that's right in my backyard here in Colorado Springs. But their tool is very easy to use as well to send video either through LinkedIn messages, through text, through email. And one of the things I like about this touch via email, specifically with BombBomb, is that when I embed it into the email with their Gmail plugin, it gives an animated GIF preview of the first few seconds of the video right there in the email. So you can have some fun with this. You can write their name on a whiteboard. You can write a question on the whiteboard. You might look away and look back at the camera like you're surprised that it turned on. You might move into the frame so that they see that replaying. Because again, before they click the animated GIF preview to see the video, it's going to play on a loop, just like the GIFs that we see everywhere that we're sending back and forth via text and Slack and social media every day. So make your own GIF of yourself and then convey value, be succinct, and reach out with an authentic message, looking them into the eye, into the webcam, but putting your best foot forward in a personalized video touch. So those are my suggestions. I highly recommend BombBomb. You can use any tool that you like there. If you are using BombBomb, think about how you can get creative with that animated GIF that the tool gives you. And then my final touch that I mentioned earlier is a breakup email, and then scheduling some sort of follow-up task that goes into a queue or a sequence sense for me in the future. So hopefully this has been valuable for you. Again, some of the key points here are to mix it up between automated emails, custom emails, and incorporating video and adding in some creativity to those steps. Break up your LinkedIn steps into the 3 steps, which are follow, engagement, and then a personalized connection request. This is the strategy that I use and is very effective for me in finding guests to connect with and bring on to the show here on B2B Growth. Now, if you'd like a copy of a 3 email sequence for booking podcast guests that has some variables that you can customize for your own situation, shoot me a DM or a personalized LinkedIn connection request if we're not yet connected on LinkedIn. The one thing I'll ask is just start the DM or the connection request with, I want the podcast email templates. Again, a DM or a personalized connection request that just starts with, I want the podcast email templates, and I will get you a link to a Google Doc where you can take these 3 emails and customize it for your own podcast or your own content collaboration efforts as you seek to implement content-based networking in your own framework. All right, that's what I've got for today. As always, thank you so much for listening. We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.